So welcome colleagues to the EYSIER SIG, and the EYSIER stands for Empowering Young Societal Innovators for Equity and Renewal, and the SIG is Special Interest Group. And I'd like to thank Daniela, Canfarotta and Mayssa, Baldwin for coming and joining the seminar and the workshops today. I've been giving this workshop a lot of thought, and I think facilitating self-reflection through talk to build children's confidence and well-being and their capacity to connect with others and take reasonable risks and be creative in community of all faiths and none comes as a backdrop with whether children have opportunities to play and why those opportunities to play have decreased. And as you know, like many colleagues in academia, I've written books and international peer-reviewed journal articles, and yet the gap between the people in poverty in the UK and all over the world and the people who are rich has not narrowed. So we are not having, as an academic group, an impact on narrowing the achievement gap. And I know that people of all faiths go to their own places of worship, and we in our different faiths haven't narrowed the poverty gaps, and we haven't eradicated war. And I know people of no faith did a tremendous job with the Declaration of Human Rights at the end of the Second World War, but still the poverty gap is widening. So I could sit here and read from the papers that I've published, but I really want to talk today to the parents, to the people who are not particularly interested in what the papers that I've written or that many colleagues have written have got to say, because it's not changing things for them. And I think that what I'm seeing when I go into schools is the privilege of seeing advocacy by institutional leaders and enabling structures and practices that come from Ruddock and McIntyre, and there I am quoting again already. But basically these incredible leaders of thinking talked about a school culture that values and listens to all staff, with a culture of inquiry and research among teachers. And I just wonder the extent to which research is being promoted in many schools right now to help teachers understand ways in which empirical, logical, and ethical data can help them, because there's a myriad of different theories. So which ones do they choose, and how do we help them as academics make the right choice if it's not actually impacting on narrowing the achievement gaps, and when the children are entering as adults into the labour market, it's not enabling them to have access to middle class benefits, and the middle classes are shrinking and shrinking. And a tradition of pupil involvement in decision making is perhaps also being eradicated as we see more and more behaviourist approaches. So I'm asking parents, really, what is it that you need from the academy? What information do you need to help you, going on from last week's seminar, which was talking about, you know, there's a lot of blame about, and the blame is misplaced, and that we need to start taking responsibility and looking at systems that are to blame and who is structuring these systems and how we can start to restructure these systems. So, for example, in the Republic of Ireland, we are seeing high amounts of unemployment. And this is really serious for us, because when we have outsourcers in the Republic of Ireland and companies going perhaps to Bulgaria, as we saw in the US when companies were outsourcing to go to where cheaper labour was, what we do is we eliminate the markets that buy the product at an expensive price, and we shift the market because the people who used to be able to afford the product are no longer employed or on 0-hour contracts because of the outsourcing. And the countries that have been outsourced to, for example, in Bulgaria, their equivalent minimum national wage might be €2, and the Irish minimum national wage might be €10 from 2001. But the loaf of bread in Bulgaria might be 12p, and the loaf of the Republic of Ireland might be £2. So as a ratio, when you move to a cheaper country, as in terms of labour, you're moving to a ratio where what people can afford with that money is in proportion to their countries. So when we're working with colleagues in Albania, we're seeing how can they compete in an international market when their cost of living is so different to that in Europe, in other countries that are cash rich, like Germany. So what I'm thinking is, if outsourcing is unsustainable because you destroy the markets that the companies in the countries that you've left to go to new markets that quite frankly may not want the product and wouldn't be able to afford it at the price if it was for sale. So that price would need to be dropped, or it would need to be exported back to the original country. We've got a real issue in terms of how we're propelling entrepreneurial economies linked to the kind of education system that our parents want for their children, that is going to bring well-being and happiness, but give them the competencies they need to be able to live good lives and have economic and social well-being. And I think a big concern is, for example, in the UK, we have had a lot of people voting for consent, and with that comes a choice that they will now continue with the economic policies. And I'm just challenging, when we look at how we get social mobility and how we level up, ways in which the government, now that they have got public policy and public support, will they serve the public's interests, and in many other countries, to ensure that the kinds of outsourcing that are taking place really are understood in terms of the way in which they are impacting local economies. So, for example, I'm privileged enough to live near a large Muslim community where my mother and father's business was. They started it there in Spark Brook. And basically, a lot of local shops, mama and papa shops, and that are growing and growing, show a really wonderful economy. And I think this is something that the parents are proud of, and they know each other, they know the community, and they care. And I'm just wondering, that is that a way, when we look at coming out of COVID-19 and we look at the economy and we look at high unemployment rates, how can we start to mobilize the education system with parents to be able to develop the competencies for young people to start small, medium, or even micro enterprises, maybe starting small with cafe societies, with mama and papa shops, and how we empower them to rebuild local economies so that they can start to generate income, generate wealth, and generate gross domestic products per capita, not through corporation taxes and encouraging companies to come and incorporate like Delaware and other places, as I talked about in my book, but really to do that through genuine where hand meets land, where there is not a financialization, not a shifting of monies that are electronic, but actually of products where we buy and sell, and where there is the transactions that will enable people to have an income, and that they can use that income to contribute higher taxes because of the percentage they can contribute because they're earning more, which allows the government to invest more in infrastructure, which allows the virtual circles of more investment attracts more business, makes business easier. And I'm just wondering the extent to which we're looking at the purpose of education in terms of what our parents of our children want, how they're participating in the mobilization of their children's education, giving them access to middle class pathways and social and economic well-being as a priority in this COVID-19 recovery, and how we can invest in the kinds of competencies that they need to be gaining in terms of creativity, in terms of being autonomous, in terms of having the confidence to set out and start their own businesses in groups, in teams. And when I'm seeing teams in schools, how are we really choosing to optimize that in terms of Mayssa's framework, in terms of collaboration, in terms of asking good questions about what's going to make this business succeed, who is our market, who are our customers, how do we help our clients know more about our business, how do we market it, how do we enable this to really drive forward good communication, receiving and giving good understanding, so that we can start to look at issues of mental health in our communities and of food banks and of the kinds of pressures that people are feeling, and start to release those, start to transform those into people having the competencies they need to choose and make good decisions, to make a good life for themselves and a future investing in a pension pot. Because currently, when I look at the outcomes of the curriculum, I'm not seeing how we are going to empower people to build the economies and propel local entrepreneurial economies and really amplify the way in which their work can, through enjoyment, also bring GDP per capita. I'm just not seeing it at this stage. And I think we really need to look at how we do that and how we start to narrow the gaps, not just in terms of cash, in terms of, you know, the very rich and the very poor, but also in terms of the black-white achievement gap, the gender achievement gap, and SEND, special educational needs and disability. In fact, all the protected characteristics of the UK 2010 Equality Act. How can we start to transform that and bring parents in on this, that they want to be active participants? They're not passive, they're not receiving, you know, text to say your child's done well today, but they're actually active part of the child's learning journeys, that says this is what our children will be learning, and we're fully supporting you, and we're going to support you in the key performance indicators that go along term by term, week by week, day by day, so that we work together in new partnerships for prosperity, and we can start to bring peace. Because I have seen in communities violence, uncertainty, chaos and ambiguity. And this is, we deserve more. And I think our education systems and our teachers are giving so much. They couldn't give more. I think they need a steer now in terms of being able to participate in the policy making that will start to generate the GDP per capita. And so really my call is, what do parents need from us in new partnerships? From the academy, from schools, from the quadruple helix, that means the business, the industry, the services, the public services, public policy. How do we now start to narrow that gap? Because we have had 3 refs over 21 years, for which I've been eligible to be submitted for all of them. That's the research excellence framework, or research excellence assessment. And what we're really looking at is the impact is 4-star, but the achievement gaps between the very rich, the very poor, the black, the white, the gender, the SEND, the VUC, the violence, uncertainty, chaos and ambiguity is growing after 21 years of saying our impact has been superb. So there is a breakdown in terms of how we're empowering civil servants to use empirical, ethical and logical data to start to narrow these gaps for social and economic well-being for all, through economic and social policy. So that's really what I wanted to say, rather than read the paper that I'd already got, because reading this paper is not reaching out to the parents, and we need to start reaching out to new groups and mainstreaming some of these incredible academic ideas that I've seen from people like Reddick and McIntyre, from people like Jim Conroy, from people like Bob Davis. We really need to start mainstreaming these wonderful ideas and finding ways to do that. So that's my keynote. So I'd like to pass over to the panel with some questions, and really I guess we're sort of looking at what does being a participant in the education system look like, and how can we find that patiently. We're not going to get immediate results, but how can we be patient with ourselves and patient with each other? That's the first question. And what are the challenges with that? And what strategies can we use if we feel frustrated or even angry to sort of have that resilience and that patience to not act on some of these very strong feelings? So if I may pass that over to the panel.
Thank you very much, Alison, for your speech. Effectively, you pointed out the difficulties in the job market, and students need to prepare to withstand complexity. And the competence to collaborate with others requires some human qualities, for example, the patience. And in your opinion, what does being patient with yourself look like in your experience, Mayssa?
Thank you, Daniela. Thank you, Alison, for a wonderful introduction. What is it being patient with myself? I think patience, and I would like to speak about patience in the beginning. Patience is, I think for me, it's the ability to wait through problems, through obstacles, through challenges. Ability to wait, to reach, not to wait passively, to wait actively, to reach our goals, because if we're not patient, we would give up immediately. And in our education systems, we need to be very patient, because it is controlled by people who are in power and authority, and we're not. So we need to be patient to convey the message so that we can reach our goals. So that's one thing. And I think part of it is delaying gratification. When we're trying to achieve something, we delay gratification until we get there. And I think this is missing a lot from our society now, and from the community and from the system, all of it. There's no delay for gratification. We want quick fixes. And this is what the education system is doing, is, I think, in my opinion, it's quick fixes. And this is not what we need. We need long-term plans, long-term goals. And as Alison said, we're not going to find immediate results now. And that's delaying gratification, I guess. But we need to work on the long term. And when you refer to standardized tests, I guess, did you, and the curriculum, how is it going, and the outcome of the curriculum now, I do agree that we do not, I don't see that the outcome of the curriculum is going to help our young people, to find job in the market or start their own businesses. And I don't think now young people, like my daughter, knows how to, start a business idea, or how to ask questions about it, and how to go through the whole process in order to accomplish it. And I think because I think the curriculum has stolen our kids if I may say, stolen our kids from us. To compete for scores, to compete, to have a very unhealthy competition. I guess it's good to compete, but it's just there's a lot of difference between a healthy competition and an unhealthy one. So this is I think patience. We need patience until we get there. As academics, we need to be very patient with our research, with our voice, with our message, to come across. What is patience in your opinion, Daniela?
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. And you, Alison, you can add something about this?
I'd really like to hear what you have to say, Daniela, because I know we've spent a lot of time after we've worshipped the Supreme Being talking about these sorts of things. But if I may, just to answer your question, I think patience is about delaying gratification, and I wonder the extent to which we learn how to do that. I wonder the extent to which that is something that is part of a family's repertoire when a family is facing such immediate issues of food. The food bank queue is 5 miles long and there's 2 meters between each person for COVID. And you know, when we're looking at the kinds of patients, then some people are at a stage where waiting isn't actually possible. I mean, I was privileged to write with Mayssa Baldwin, who enabled me to work with some of her data from Lebanon when we looked at education policy. And we were writing that after the huge explosion. So we were hearing about people's stories that we were researching through secondary data about a man who'd come from Syria with his family to escape the violence and got them safe. And then after the explosion, he lost his wife and 2 of the children. And he had 1 child that survived. So when you hear those sorts of stories, when people don't have access to food, when they don't have access to water, when they don't have access to a home or access to the kind of work they had before, that's the kind of patience where there are needs that need to be met. And we are living in a world where we're talking about these gaps. And yes, I've done an economic analysis of this in education policy for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals as a roadmap. But, you know, people don't have time to sit for a day and a half to read a book. So how do we get these messages across to, if we are able to eliminate poverty, which is the first Sustainable Development Goal, through equitable education, which is the 4th Sustainable Development Goal, we would eradicate violence. We would bring peace. We would enable us to have more money to spend on medicines, more money to spend on people learning more about themselves and each other and living good lives and making good choices. But at the moment, if you're in survival mode and you're being patient and you can't see an end out of survival mode other than not surviving because there isn't any resources, then I think we're very privileged if we are in a country where we can exercise patience, and we do have that luxury. So I think essentially what we need to do is, I think, outreach for our own communities to work together patiently, collaborate and build local economies, and not expect immediate quick fixes, not expect a behaviorist, you do this and I'll do that, but actually a longer term social contract that is about building and investing, social investment, public investment, and social rewards for that risk taking, rather than social investment, social risk, and privatizing the rewards, which is what we see with some procurement and how the law can protect that. But what's happening to the law if neoliberalism is the deliberate, rapid removal of laws that people don't even understand what's been removed and the impact of it? And interestingly enough, we don't teach that in schools. So a lot of things are happening that people don't fully understand. And I just don't understand why we don't want people to understand what's happening to them, other than that they're getting poorer. So I do think that there's opportunities of classrooms to connect, for us to develop networks between parents and between schools and within schools. And I think there's opportunities to connect between different nation states so that we can find out ways in which we can build new partnerships, and we can start to eliminate poverty through equity in education. But we need to start to think about the purpose of that. And we need to start to think about how does education empower us to live a good life in the long term, when we are voting for people who need, as soon as they're in power, to start planning their next election campaign immediately rather than deliver on their manifesto. So we have created a system that is not empowering politicians to deliver. And if we want successful politicians, as the philosopher King might say, the person who is getting to steer the ship is not necessarily the best one to do that. I don't know, but I just think that if we enabled people to make informed choices about who they wanted to steer the ship and for how long, and what the long-term and immediate results on investment would be. You know, why are we teaching people to get good results in maths, English and science, and not good results in, I understand the manifesto and I understand how to hold governments accountable and I understand how the law works? So I think it's patience at different levels, but I think we have people in this world at the moment in survival mode who don't have the luxury of patience. And that's something we need to seriously consider because they're our partners.
Thank you, Alison. It's true that to do new partnership, it is important to be patient with others. And the problem is, what does be patient with others means, in your opinion? Mayssa?
Patient with others.
Others, yes, for the partnership.
I think we can go back to the framework, and we can choose from that. How do we accept each other, and how do we communicate with each other empathetically, and we accept each other's ideas. I think part of this is requires patience, because we do claim that we're open-minded, but when it comes in practice, to what extent we're really open-minded about others' opinions and other faiths and beliefs and systems, and where do they come from, their culture and their background. I think it's more about acceptance of others. If you accept other people that are different from you, I think this is when we teach patience, we model patience, I guess.
So the tolerance is very important in this way.
Tolerance, yes, exactly. And also I want to comment on what Alison said about voting. The other day I was watching a political talk show in Lebanon regarding voting. Young people are not informed about elections and about voting and how is it done and why is it done and how does this affect their life and decisions later on. So I'm quoting from this guy. This is not my words, but they asked him, aren't these people who voted for this government, which is a corrupted government and has been in power for 30 years? And he replied, he said, this government created those people. It's not the other way around. This government created those people to vote for them. So the whole system was managed and controlled in a way that to have people in this system that will vote for them again and again and again. Every 4 years, the elections happen in Lebanon, and still you see the same people being voted for. So, it's about. So that's why I see it as a top-down approach. Unfortunately, if the government is creating an environment and establishing grounds where people vote for them, I think this will affect directly and indirectly the education system. How is it formed? Because they don't want people to think for themselves. They don't want people to make decisions for themselves. They want people to vote for the decisions that they want to have in the country. And as Alison said, for the next election, and they start to prepare for their manifesto. So that's why it's a top-down approach. It's if the government changes the way the government think about people and building society, and this will affect the education system, and this is how the education system, will teach young people to think for themselves and give them opportunities. The point is, how are we giving these young people opportunities? Maybe most of them, and I guess maybe all of them, they want to make their own decisions. They want to think. They want to be able to be part of this community, and they want to be active citizens, but they don't have the chance.
And Alison, could you add something about what means be patient with others at school, because the problem is at school, in the classroom?
Well, I think from what Mayssa was saying, I completely agree. And I think that in school, it's about learning to take turns, isn't it? It's about learning to share. And I think it's about understanding that in the bigger picture, everybody will get a turn to act. But sometimes it's not your turn to act right now. And what do you do in that space? And maybe there's a lot of joy in watching other people do well, which completely flips the notion of seeing someone else do well and you think, oh, I wish that was me. Because actually that's just going to add to your misery if you think, oh, I wish that was me, I wish I was that person, because everybody is just right the way they are. They're in their own learning journey of themselves in relationship with the other. And the joy of seeing other people succeed and being happy brings so much joy and happiness to the self. And I would just say, give it a go. And it really does change. But I think it may be something to do with what we talked about before in a previous session, in attachment theory with Bowlby. And I think it's, are we in a situation where we understand our ties, our attachments to others, and what kind of process we need to go through to have, like pillars, enough space between us to let the structure stand, but not so much space that we don't see each other. So it's about getting the balance right. And I don't know, in the curriculum, as an intended learning outcome or a competency, are we learning about how to get the balance right in terms of being happy for other people who succeed and waiting for your turn? Because in the bigger picture, everybody will succeed. Everybody's got gifts, but everybody can't be all things to all people. And I do think that sometimes if you feel a bit jealous about somebody, it can cause you so much unhappiness. And if you flip that and you're just really happy with them, then I think it makes the world a better place. And I just wonder the extent to which we feel insecure and threatened, and whether that influences how patient we are with other people, because maybe we don't love ourselves enough, and we need to learn to love ourselves to love others. And maybe this patience and being kind needs to start with, we're worthy. And if people are telling you you're not worthy, you might start believing it. And so I think we need to start having more and more people who just reaffirm how lovely people are and give them the chance to be lovely. What do you think, Daniela?
Yes, I agree with you. The problem is at school, the tolerance with my own error and the error of the others. This is the problem. And I think that there is a correlation with the environment in the family. For example, first I told about the tolerance with one's mistakes. I think that this depends a lot of how much lived in the family. For example, I remember a child who had a mother who dedicated time to her children. And I remember those children were serene because they had learned that if they were wrong, they could know that thing again well. I remember still another student whose parents were absent from home had little passion for the mistakes he made, because having no one to deal with when his homework did not go well, he stopped working. I don't know, but I don't know what you think, but my suggestion is at the end of the day, it is important parents ask your child what difficulties they found in the afternoon study, because often impatience with oneself comes from the idea that it is better to hurry, but it is not necessary to. By proceeding slowly and calmly, you can understand the concept more deeply and have fun in the meantime. I don't know if you agree with this. Mayssa, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I've been arguing about time a lot, especially in our education system, is that we don't have time, even as teachers, you know, and I really want to, you know, just delve in the concept in the class, and I want to explain more, and I want to connect it to real life situations, but you don't have time. You know, proceeding calmly or slowly is more like a dream for our students, you know. In the afternoon they have to finish very quickly their homework, because there's so much homework, there's so much that they have to do, and it just doesn't finish, you know, and really it doesn't finish. So and here you know, it comes with patience as well. The parents become impatient with their children, the children impatient with their teachers, you know, and it becomes a very vicious cycle. And it's all because, you know, just if you removed, I'm not going to say radical reform of curriculum now, but if you just, you know, just offload it a little bit for these children to breathe in the afternoon, and I think this will help them, you know, to be patient. But my question is for you, and for Alison, is can you describe a situation, and I know that you're both very professional academics, and I know that you've been very patient. Can you describe a situation where you felt you're really being patient with someone or a situation?
Yes, for example, in this case, in the classroom, when children, my students are teenagers, and it is very difficult when they want to talk with others. And this is the problem. In this case, the most important thing is to focus their attention with something that they are interested about it. The problem is this: how we can find anything that could that it is possible for children to be interested about what I'm saying. At school, this is the problem, the interest of the students. Alison, what do you think about it?
I completely agree with you. I think I have endless amounts of patience when I'm with children and helping them learn a new concept, like using a protractor. And I really enjoy watching them work it out and then realize, you know, that they've now lined it up perfectly along the line, but they've realized there's nothing to measure because they need to flip the protractor, and then to see them work that out, that means that when I'm not there, they'll be able to do it. And that's the joy. The joy is endless patience with teaching children or facilitating them learning how to do it without you being there, so that they'll never need you again because they've worked it out and then they can work it out again. But I think where my patience is sadly tested is when people deliberately hurt people. They want to hurt somebody. And I want to go back to the root cause of that, because I don't think that's in us. I think there's a truth from the privilege I've had of working with nursery children and early years, that there's a truth, and that they understand this, and that we slowly close down to that as people accidentally hurt us. And I think people sometimes hurt us because they've learned how to hurt from being hurt. And I think we don't have to go back far in our history to see that people were working in the poorhouse. Not many generations ago, people were being brutalized on the beaches. First World War, Second World War, similarly played out between Iran and Iraq. Same kind of brutal barbed wire gun warfare. And I just think if we could just unpack that, but it takes patience to help me understand why we hurt each other, and then take that courageous step to say, I'm not going to hurt anyone again, and I know why I don't want to hurt anyone again, and to then live that truth. But I think that if we're in a survival mode, the aesthetic of getting to that point is something that education has a powerful place to play in terms of stopping those cycles, stopping the cycle and allowing people a new start with fresh ideas, with the kinds of starts that other people have who don't ever have that kind of pain from their generations past, because for whatever reason, they've always been on another side of those sorts of experiences. So I think it's where I would really love the patients to be, is to understand how we go back to use psychologies, ethics, and philosophies of trust to understand how we can live peacefully and experience that in everybody's lives, so that we know how to return to that place. But if some people have never experienced that, and it's never been part of their generations previously's history, then how do we stop the cycles of abuse? How do we stop the pain? How do we stop the hurt? So I would love to spend more time working out with people how we can stop the cycles of abuse, stop the pain, stop the VUCA, and understand where the hurt started, and then eradicate that poverty, that impoverished nature, to enable people to rebuild, because it's hard to let go of the pain and the bitterness when you're still surrounded in starvation and poverty. And I think that's a big problem. And I don't have a lot of patience for people starving. That's true.
It's true. I think that much of the impatience comes from the frustration you feel when people or situations don't live up to your expectations. And instead of thinking that things have to go a certain way, accept that people and situations aren't perfect and take life's adversities with elegance and humor. This is sometimes the solution. And those who react like this become more resilient. How do you think, Mayssa, about the form of the impatience?
Form of what?
Impatience.
Impatience.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, something I wanted actually to ask also both of you about. I've been struggling to identify exactly how do we develop patience, because as you said, when you see abuse, when you see poverty, starvation, I can speak for myself, is that I have zero tolerance. I would, if a situation occurs in front of me, I would stop it immediately. But definitely this is not the way, you know, to stop everything, right? And to stop the whole cycle of abuse, or to stop the I think we need more mindfulness and awareness of our feelings, and also forgiveness to what happened to us. And this is how we can stop the cycle. If each and one of us is educated enough to understand that whatever happened to us, either pain was imposed on us or abuse, that we are the ones who stop it. It starts from us. And I recall, you know, incidents with parents, teachers, and admins, and how they react impatiently at an incident or something. It's like you feel like there's some kind of attack there, rather than an understanding of our patience of the situation. I think the more we build awareness about difficult situations or challenges without reacting, I think reacting and impatience, they come together. When we're impatient, we react. And it's something I really want to ask as well. It's like, how should we react, and when we're impatient, when as Alison said, our patience was tested, and it's just come to an end now. Drawing on my experience, I just can't see animals being tortured or slaughtered, for example. And I took a decision in my life to become a vegan, because I thought I might be someone who will, you know, just stop this cycle at some point. I don't, in the same way, I don't impose these beliefs on others. You see, I just don't impose this decision on my family. I don't impose this decision. And this is when I maybe try to role model it, or just try to be patient until they understand it. And it all starts within us, inside of us, and in the classroom with students. If I'm patient with my student, and he can feel it, he can feel that I was patient with him because he was challenged, or he did a mistake. I think we can teach it without saying, oh look, I was patient with you, without even saying it.
And in your opinion, what strategies we can use in this situation, in classroom, for example?
What strategies to be patient?
Yes.
This is what I'm trying to ask, is like, how do we develop this kind of patience, you know, along the way?
The problem is, for example, a strategy at school that works when I feel frustrated is, for example, to look the positive aspects of this situation as well. For example, studies show that those who show gratitude in daily life tend to be more patient and have better self-control. It helps me to think about, for example, 4 things you feel grateful for every day. It is important to take a moment, I think, to enjoy the feeling of gratitude. For me, it works very well in daily life. And Alison, what do you think about the strategies?
I totally agree about the gratitude. I think that I think there's something about neuro-linguistic programming, which I think we need to be very careful about, and how that may be played out in curriculums if we are teaching prescribed subjects that don't have any form of inquiry or any kind of participatory dialogic approach. So just think that my concern is there are a lot of theories that we can spend a lot of time reading about, and that it would be really useful for people to understand what those are. But if they're not interested, then we need to find a way of having the kind of structures in the classroom that do exactly what you've just said. So I totally agree with you. It is about developing that patience, and just, I don't know whether it's about having high expectations, but just being so grateful to be alive, so grateful to have everything that we have. I sometimes feel I can't see my plate. It's so overladen, and other people don't have a plate, and I don't know why, and I don't deserve that, and they do. So, or we all deserve it. So I just think it's being very grateful for what I've got, and then trying to give back as much as I can to empower others to be raised up to where they belong, and to have that kind of bountiful experience. So I think gratitude is a very positive thing. So the more that we pray, perhaps, I pray because I'm a Christian, but the more that we think positive thoughts and a gratitude, have thanks, are we accidentally programming ourselves to think good things? If we read the words that are really positive and teach us good ways to live, are we accidentally, or is there some kind of way in which we are learning that and positively reaffirming it? As long as we have opportunities to critique, and my Lord Jesus Christ, he says, what do you think? There's never, this is the way. It's always, what do you think? I'm offering you a choice. You know, he might say, I'm the way, the truth, and the life, but it's your choice whether you follow me. And all faiths and none, it seems to say the same thing in scripture. In the Quran, who are you to compel them? It says to believe. Who are you to compel them? It's always about choice. And I think as being grateful and having a grateful heart, and choosing to read things that will affirm humanity, going back to Richard Pring's first lecture on this EYSIER SIG, and what it is to be human. I think that's where we need to be, lifting ourselves up. So the gratitude is really important in the classroom, and I think it can frame the way in which we can be patient with each other.
Thank you. And I don't know if in the classroom you can see how students develop the impatience. I don't know if Mayssa, you have experience about this, the external symptoms of the impatience in your students.
There's a lot in my context.
For example, okay, you might.
I mean, when you, of course, you can't really spot it in the first 2-3 weeks, you know, because you need to get to know your students very well, and once you know them, I'd like to tell you, believe me, you will feel like they're your own kids, and you start feeling, their feelings. And when you feel like someone is impatient, you can see the signs of anxiety, you see signs of anger, you see signs of negative emotions, and also never underestimate silence. When they're very silent, it just sometimes it scares me more than the ones who react. The signs of when they're silent, I feel like there's so much going on, like a storm inside, and that can be also a sign of impatience. But you need to be very close to them, speak to them. I think dialogue is very important. I think sometimes, because we are so overwhelmed by life, we also forget to communicate. It's like it's good to communicate clearly about our feelings to each other. And I think in order to communicate our feelings, we need to create safe environments for our kids in the classroom, outside the classroom. If it's not a safe environment, they will not tell you, and they will not even show you the signs of impatience. And I think in my context, it's very important that they feel safe, because I think we described this in the previous session about blame. Is you get blamed if you do mistakes, and mistakes is only part of the learning journey. If we don't do mistakes, we cannot learn. We never get it right, from the first time. Sometimes we do, and I really do celebrate it. But also when they see other students who are achieving, and just like and doing so well, and they get A's in every single subject, and they can't even get an A in one subject, they are defined, they are labeled, the system, the parents, even their own parents. And that's a huge problem, because I think parents are the center of gravity for kids. If this center of gravity is shaken, if this center of gravity is labeling you, I mean, this is where for them at the ages 12, 13, and even younger, this is the source of love, they're depending on it. And if this is my source of love, is not being patient with me, is defining me with different kind of shameful words, or telling or blaming me or whatever, it just like they will definitely grow out of patience, and this becomes the cycle. And I'm not blaming parents here, because their grandparents do not know, the grandparents did not know, and especially we never had our grandparents did not have internet access. They can't access information, and there wasn't much awareness that has been raised. And I think most of the information that they got, they were interpreted by religious people, just because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think our grandparents and our ancestors, they used to get information from the Bible or from the Quran, or from just, it was very limited. Even education was limited in mosques. As far as I have researched about my context, they used to send their kids to the mosque to learn to read and write, and then later on came the idea of schools, because it was imported from the West. So this cycle, I hope it will stop at some point, because now parents have access to these the disinformation, to these dialogues, the way even when we are communicating now, it raises awareness for me. After we finish this session, I reflect on it and I think about the ideas that I have heard and ideas that I'm trying to convey. So I'll go back to the fact that communicating, if our children, I say kids, students, you know, our people around us, they need to tell us how they're feeling, because we find difficulty ourselves to identify our feelings. So we can't interpret others' feelings, and if we interpret them, we might interpret them in the wrong way, and we lose our relationships in this lost communication. So it's fine if our kids come and tell us, I'm not happy, I'm not okay, and it's okay. You know, you can't be happy all the time, and we can't be okay all the time. Sometimes we don't feel okay, and that's fine. You know, and just when they know that it is okay, you know, not to be fine, not to be happy, and it's a phase, and we go through ups and downs, and this is how life is, you know. And I think this going through ups and downs can help, you know, with our patients, because we know that we're not going to be down in the well forever, you know, and we're not going to be up on the peak forever, you know, and that's how we can, you know, teach some patience. And as you said, Daniela, it's an amazing point that you made with gratitude, because just count your blessings every day.
Thank you very much. And Alison, if you want the last question, because the time is at the end, but I want to ask you, how can talking with children help them overcome low self-esteem or shyness, for example? Mayssa has just said about this something, but do you want to add something about this?
I just think we need more time in the day for people to come and talk. I mean, I had a child, for some reason, something happened and he began to trust me more, and he told me something really important. And I felt really humbled and really privileged. And I think that when people share really important information, that it might seem just you know, common to other people, but when you're a teacher, these kinds of information about a person help you develop the lesson planning, because you think, oh, I know that child really likes that, so I can try and weave that into my teaching. So I think when you show that you've listened to them, and then they actually see that you've acted on it and you've tried to change something for them, I think it shows them how important they are, not because you're affirming it, but because they are important, and you're doing it because they are important, and you're doing it because you're in a school, because you're there to teach children, for them to learn. It's all about the children. That is the only reason we have schools, for the children. And if we lose sight of that, and so it's about listening to them, showing that you've listened to them, and showing them that the safety is first, and then from the safety they open their minds because they feel safe. And then if you slow down and you show that what they're telling you is really important and part of the motivation for the learning, and part of you map and interweave what they need to know with their lived experiences, from the intended learning outcomes and from their lived experiences. But as John Dewey says, we start to make it meaningful and worthwhile and interesting. And I think that it kind of does raise their esteem, and it makes them more patient with you, because and with each other, because they can see you really are trying to be patient with them. So it's about a relationship. And if it's just behaviorist, I'm going to teach this curriculum to you, and you're going to be silent and you're not going to talk back. how can I have a relationship? How can I hear the children? How can they hear each other? I mean, there's a wonderful book, and I'll put it on the EYSIER SIG about having debates, about dialogues. And I think that if we can really start the children to have private time when they're doing an activity, they begin to co-construct knowledge with each other, and it's not an independent alone thing. It's something that maybe 3 or 4 of them start to understand something, and that they share, and they kind of distribute some tasks, and they show that some people are good at some things and other people are good at some things. So I think if you slow down and let children talk and be children and have patience with each other, because there's patience built into the curriculum, then I think it's really important. And that's the moments I treasure, and I find the results are better. So I find that when the results are better, then the accountability, the people who are holding me accountable for the learning are really happy that the children are learning well. So it gives me more space to build pedagogical relationships, and that gives more space to hear the children and for the children to develop their character and who they are, and to the good things. Like today we were talking about characteristics of teamwork, and we at the end of the day reflected on what was good about working with each other, and you know, that's about what it's good about being a child at that school, and it's about self-esteem, and it's about community. So I think that's really important for me, and I think so, yes, it is about self-esteem, building that in and having time for that.
Thank you very much, Alison, for your talk, and Mayssa, thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniela. Thank you, Alison.
Thank you. So we'll bring it to a close, and Daniela, thank you so much. I'm really grateful to you to lead that. Good night.
Good night.